So here we go. We are recording. It's session 2. We can call it drink and dramatherapy interview. DDTEI. Because I have a drink. I don't know if you have a drink.
Cheers. I mean, it's a different hour for me, so I'm not having a cocktail.
I know.
But it's a seltzer and cranberry mix.
Oh, amazing. It sounds amazing. Yeah. So, hello, Adam, again. I think the most people know you because you are already a YouTube star on the dramatherapy interview. So, we are continuing, and the first question is, I know that you are the part of NADTA, so North American Dramatherapy Association. So I would like to ask you about your participation there. What are you doing? What is your focus? What is your interest?
Yeah. So Jakub, it's great to be here again. It's always good to see you. And we're back. We're talking about drama therapy. And, you asked me about the North American Dramatherapy Association, and in the United States and Canada, that is our governing association that holds the field of drama therapy over here. And I am blessed and fortunate to sit on the board of directors as the Cultural Humility, Equity, and Diversity Chair. And that was previously known as the Diversity Chair, right? And what we do is we look to make sure that, we're approaching the work of drama therapy with cultural responsibility, with care for the different identities and life experiences of those who are within the organization. And again, of course, those who we serve, you know what I mean? And, I might argue, Jakub, that it's the heartbeat of the organization, right? Like we hold the heart, the affect of our membership. We hold the heart of those we serve. We hold people's experiences. We hold people's lives. We hold who people are, their identities, and that's really neat. And there's many roles on the board. There's ethics and research and education, government affairs. There's so many, right? That's just to name a few. And for me, this is one that I was really drawn to because of who I am, not only as a drama therapist, but as a person, right? Mm-hmm. So, I'm Adam Stevens and I'm a drama therapist, but I'm also a Black man, My pronouns, they are he and they. And a lot of times people ask, like, what does that mean for you? Like he and they. Well, it speaks to my gender identity and also my gender expression, right? So when I say my pronouns are he, I identify as a male. I'm a man. But in my gender expression, right, I get to be creative. I get to be queer. I get to be me. I'm not binary. I'm not man or woman. I do me. And whatever that means, there's a lot of fluidity and flexibility in that. And I love that part about me. And I love that I get to be that way. And, when I work with clients, and I'm my authentic self, it gives permission for them to be their authentic selves. And I think that is, Jakub, that's really important. You know what I mean? It's really important to have that kind of representation. It's important to have a Black man in this role because I work with so many BIPOC or Black, Indigenous people of color in my practice that it's important to have representation and not just have white clinicians, but also have Black clinicians,
Yeah.
So, that speaks to my race, right? That speaks to my gender identity and my gender expression. And I'm also a queer man. That's my sexuality. I'm a gay man. And to have that representation is important. Jakub, I'm someone who lives with a disability. Disabilities, plural, right? Some you can see, like I wear glasses, you can see that, I need assistance there. That's part of my disability. And then others that you can't see, they're invisible disabilities. And I believe in the principles of disability justice and accessibility and inclusion. And when you take all of that together, and that's just me, right? When you take all of that together, Jakub, and we think about it, I'm thinking about this is how I show up, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not terribly unique. There are other people who show up like me too, whether it's my race, my gender, my sexuality, my abilities, right? And so we need to have this committee of cultural humility, equity, and diversity in order to support in order to advocate for an organization that does, once again, upholds the themes and ideals of cultural responsibility, upholds the ideals and the themes of the principles of disability justice, explores that we're not just one thing, but, Kimberly Crenshaw says, we're a myriad of all of our roles, all of our identity locators. That's intersectionality, right? That's intersectionality. And it leads me to this idea of working towards an anti-racist, an anti-white supremacist organization, right? Because we know that white supremacy is prominent in systems all across the world, in the Czech Republic, right? In the United States and in Canada. And how do we work towards dismantling some of these symptoms, breaking them down? Like, if I'm being honest, we got to break shit down. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be polite about it, because I don't think we have to be. I don't think we should be. It's time to break these systems down so that this way we can enter into the new next, right? Enter into a practice in a field where we're upholding, a social justice lens. You know what I mean? And I think that's so important. And how are we implementing social justice in our interventions, right? In the interventions and modalities in drama therapy, in some of the foundational approaches, right? Yeah, I know that was Jakub, that was a big answer to your question, but like, when I think about, please.
Yeah, it is big answer, and also like there's many themes which we can discuss, because I'm also thinking how it's difficult for the white people to imagine how it's to be like, about the white supremacy. I can imagine that somebody who says, oh, why do they want that, all about the white supremacy and all the things, because they are white, and otherwise it's completely mad. I don't understand why the people are dividing in the scale of the the color of the skin. Why? Who started that? It's completely nonsense for me. I understand the consequences, but the reason, I have completely no idea. Like, if you are blue, orange, green, whatever, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it's coming to my mind that I think for me it was also like hard to imagine that, and hard to not explain but understand. But I can remember my first week in New York City, when I lived in East Harlem, and it's kind of like, usually I was the only one who was the white on the street. And, usually it was around the Central Park, when usually all the, let's say, white people left the train, and all the black people came into the train. And I was like, oh my gosh, now I can finally feel how it's to be like the minority, how it's to be like just one. And it was like, I really loved this experience, and I'm grateful for these feelings, because I'm still remembering that and trying to remind myself when I'm reading about the white supremacy and racism and all the things, because I think it was the very important moment for me. It's hard to explain to people, because, and as you said, especially in Czech Republic, there is like the mainstream of being white. We have just few Roma people, which like our government is not working with. It's just like saying, okay, we will give you some money and leave us, and it will be, this is the solution. It's not solution, but that's how they are dealing with that. And yeah, Czech Republic is not multicultural, like the country. So yeah, maybe I would stick with the theme of white supremacy. I think it's very important and very interesting. And I would like also to ask you for a little bit more, maybe explanation. Maybe how do you see you and the community and all the people? I think it's important to tell this team.
Yeah, and this is full, right? And Jakub, we could take a great deal of time to have this conversation.
Mm.
What I'm thinking about right now is the importance of you and I having this conversation, the importance of drama therapy in Europe and the Czech Republic, drama therapy here in New York City and in North America, having a conversation with each other,
Yeah.
right? Because that's where it starts. We're identifying that there's a sickness. We're identifying that there's a problem. And we are identifying that in the work that we do and beyond in the world, we need healing, right? We need healing. And it starts with noticing that there's a problem and identifying that there's a problem. And so when I think about, white supremacist systems, it starts with my education, right? I went to New York University and I loved going to New York University. It was a great education. And that's where you and I met.
Yeah,
we
that's
got to
right.
meet and we became quite close. And here we are some years later,
Yeah.
sitting down on Zoom, having this conversation. And I think about a lot of the articles and writing, the pedagogy that was presented to me when I was enrolled as a student, and how a lot of it was white. Um, and I think about how challenging that was because, yes, it made sense, but there was also bits that did not make sense all the time, and that was challenging. I'm also very aware that the majority of the students who enroll, not just at NYU, but in a lot of the programs, in North America, are white women, right? Are white women. I was the only Black male in my program before you arrived. I was the only male,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
right.
um, and that too, holds its challenges. Yeah. So as we're continuing on, I white supremacy speaks to the belief that a certain group of people are better than others based upon their race. Yeah. And Jakub, it extends beyond that, right? It extends beyond that because I grew up in white supremacist culture. So I too, you know, um, hold some of that within me and practice that, capitalism, perfectionism, binary ways of thinking. It's right or it's wrong. It's this or it's that, right? And there's so many more. And I have to keep myself accountable and keep myself present to know like, oh, I'm engaging in these systems too. And what does that mean? What does that feel like? Um, One of the big initiatives that I've been able to work on in my role as CHEDIC, or Cultural Humility, Equity, Diversity Chair, is the Drama Therapists Against White Supremacy campaign. And there is a drama therapist in Canada who works with Concordia University. Her name is Jessica Bluer, who was the primary author of this. And I was really grateful that she invited me to be a part of this and be a co-author with her on the Drama Therapists Against White Supremacy. And it's this phenomenal document that is split up into 3 surveys, right? To just bring awareness to where we're locating ourselves as clinicians, right? Around our awareness around our practices, right? Um, of white supremacy in the field of drama therapy,
Mm.
right? Um, and within it, it has these, it just, wow, it's a fluid document. So it's not complete and it never will be complete. It's not supposed to be. So it's not rigid in that way, right? So in
Yeah.
that way, we're even breaking the system. And then as we continue on, Jakub, it offers resources so that people can go in and say, oh, like I'm thinking about my practice as it relates to, they can enter into the document, find, a resource that relates to it, or even they can add a document. I found this great resource that's not included, and I can add it and I can put it in. Yeah. And I think that that is so important. And, when we, you said some really brave things just before, about your experiences. Um, a lot of people are resistant to this work, And how does that show up? It shows up with white fragility. It shows up with white tears. It shows up with just downright hatred and anger sometimes. And that's hard to hold. That's really hard to hold. And also that's why we need to do the work ever more.
Yeah.
Right? That's why we need to engage in the work ever more. You mentioned that, when you were on the subway, the train heading uptown to a predominantly Black and brown neighborhood in Harlem, Black and brown neighborhoods in Harlem. And that's what makes Harlem beautiful.
Yeah.
Harlem is changing a bit now, and that's a whole nother conversation with gentrification. But historically, Harlem has been a land of beautiful Blackness and rich, Latinx culture, and just really, really thriving. Yeah. And so when you said to Jakub that you were heading uptown on the train, and as you got higher up, you saw more diversity, and then ultimately there was a shift from white to
Yes.
folks of color. Yeah. And how for you, it was a moment of like, oh, this is what it feels like to be a minority. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I want to share with you, Jakub, that for me, that's my experience every day.
Yeah, I know.
Every day. I'm the different one. I'm the other one. I'm the token. I'm the only, So I'm not just advocating and being a champion for the field of drama therapy, right? But I'm also championing and being an advocate for people who look like me. The color of my skin. For people to express themselves in this very profound way. And I think that at its root, drama therapy lends itself to that, because drama therapy is about spontaneity and creativity, imagination, flexibility, right? It's about being performative and in our bodies. And every culture around the globe has that and has had that, right? From day one. And, we, how do I say, along the line, it it became a little different, and by that I mean, and this is controversial, what I'm going to say, and I hope it's okay that I say it. I'm going to say it.
Say it.
I'm just going to say it. I think that there's a lot of appropriation from cultures into our work. You know what I mean? It's a lot of white people who have taken from cultures that are not their own and appropriated, right? More recently, people are starting to appreciate and pay respect to, quote, credit the folks and the cultures that it came from. But this is more new in our practice, right? And it's I'm feeling really challenged by that. So in my practice, and I really try, Jakub, to honor, where it's coming from. That's part of the psychoeducation. You know what I mean? And it's interesting because I do a lot with role theory, with Robert Landy's role theory, right, and method. And so
another white guy,
and I adore Robert Landy. I adore him, and he's another white guy. And he's brilliant in that he created role theory and role method, didn't he? I mean, it's been foundational to my education as a drama therapist and also my practice, right? So the theory and the practice. And when I'm working with clients, I'll say, some of the interventions that I'm using today, some of the work that we're doing, some of the activities, the directors, whatever it may be, I say, we're speaking about category is, and we'll have runway shows and such, in order to warm up and role train, right, into the role. And I say that came from queer culture in New York City, Black and brown queer culture from the balls. And then there's an explanation of what that came from, what it means to feel liberation of self from persecution, from harm, to really feel free, to feel connected as a means to help us build into roles so that we ourselves can feel free and connected. But we have to pay respect. We have to pay homage to where it came from, right? And that's not a drama therapy thing. It's a cultural thing, right? And we speak about that, drumming, if it came from the Caribbean, if it came from Latin America, if it came from Africa, where's the drumming coming from? The drumming of, sound and movement and so on. That didn't come from Europe. It came from here. So saying, hey, you know what? Like, this is where it came from. And guess what? I'm an African American. I didn't come from Africa. I was born here. My roots, my ancestors, my heritage is very African. Yes, it is. But I'm African American. So if I'm going to take a practice or an intervention that is from Africa, I need to say this is an African practice. And this is where it came from. And in doing so, that's modeling for other clinicians. It's modeling for my clients, like, wow, like, I get it. Cool. And then they themselves can go and pay it forward or investigate, an interest, or just hold it for themselves that, like, wow, like, when I appreciate something that is not my own, this is how I move forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important with our practice.
I think what you are saying is, for me, kind of similar. That should be normal, as we are citing some book or article in our thesis. It should be the same. For me, it looks a little bit similar.
Mm-hmm.
Say, where are the roots? Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, as I'm listening to you, a lot of thinking that the theme which we discuss and your experiences, all the things. I remember I read how it's called, biography of Miles Davis.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the most famous trumpetists and jazz player.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember how he was describing the New York City and being like, even in the 80s, like the racism and all the things playing around.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, maybe I just want to say, because I think for the people it would be interesting to read it, and I can think that they can find a lot of things about racism and how to have the cultural heritage and all these things.
I think
it's connected
important.
me.
Yeah. I think that would be a great resource for folks to engage in. And such a Miles Davis is phenomenal, isn't he?
I love him.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
And if we think about it, Jakub, that's what I'm wondering about is how that serves as a case study of sorts, how do we take, because we are artists ultimately, aren't we? We're artists, we are caretakers, we are storytellers. Yes. So if we're doing that, like taking the story of Miles Davis as a case study for artistry, and how the performance of artistry as a means to build community, as a means to reflect and express, that speaks to social justice. Augusto Boal and Julian Boal, they do a lot with that, with Theater of the Oppressed, of taking what's happening in the world, putting it into theater as a means to foster change, right? To foster some kind of change, to foster healing in broken systems, I think that's really, really important. And I think that it would be really, really amazing to like use the story, the life of, and practices, right? The story, the life and practices of Miles Davis as a means to educate, to inspire the work. And not just Miles Davis, there's so many, but I think that, as in talking to him, like, that's really clever. And I love that, Jakub.
Because, I love him so much. I'm listening to him almost every week. He's the legend. He's a genius, And I really remember how the reading of the book shifted my point of view. How it was like, I was so angry how he was describing that he was driving like I think yellow or red Ferrari, and two white policemen just like took him out from the car. Who do you stole from? And started to beat them. And I remember that I was at home and starting saying all the F words and all, I was silly and like, disgusting words. And my mom was like, what's happening? I'm just reading the biography of Miles Davis, and I'm angry about white people, and maybe in some way I'm angry that I'm white, but I cannot do anything with that. Like, but there's another question: why should I? What I think I should understand what's happening, what is white supremacy, and how to be how it's to feel to be a minority. And I think this is the way.
Jakub, I agree, and this speaks to an anti-white supremacist practice of saying, we're going to have a culture of appreciation, right? We're going to have a culture of appreciation. We're going to take the time to learn, right? We're going to take the time to learn from others. We're going to learn from our mistakes. We're going to learn from our mistakes. We're going to take time to honor rather than always going to this critical place. Well, that's not the way I do it, therefore it's wrong. Well, how about you take time to see the ways that it's beneficial, the way that it thrives and nourishes people's spirits, their souls, their mental health, their emotional health, before putting it down, and then we can have a conversation. So it's about engaging in the conversation, which leads to, this the theme of inclusivity, right? Who are we bringing to the table to have these conversations? Who gets to have these conversations, right?
Yeah, I'm not thinking about the jazz music now. How, because the jazz music and blues also, it's original to like the African American people. And I'm thinking how many like the white jazz players I know. I know that so many. But there's also another thing that many white jazz players which I know, they don't care what is the color of your skin. They care about the music. That is the language.
Yes, and right.
Yes, but there's of course there is, because the industry and all these things.
In I love that word you use, industry. The industry, who the music has a language all of its own. I believe that to be true. I also believe who produces the music informs that language very much. And sometimes we hear music, but we don't get to see the music. And I think, and I wonder around that. I wonder if we're not necessarily seeing it, then who does it belong to? And some might say music belongs to nobody, it's for everybody. But if music, and I'm thinking about music that was created during slave times here in the United States, right? And how that was a way to communicate between folks, so that this way slave masters didn't understand exactly what was saying, what was being said, but it was a way to communicate between my ancestors, to create a space of community, to create a space of safety, to strategize ways to exist, whether it was existing on the plantation or finding ways to leave the plantation, which if you left and you got caught, that could be your life, or there could be severe consequences, right? And so that music was life-saving, life-changing. It was life. And when we hear it, we hear that life. And yeah, it's a language and it speaks to many people, but it came from a place of need. It came from a place of survival. And that's one culture, because I know other cultures, have their connections to music and art and drama and all of it too. And I think about how we use art as a mechanism for healing, a mechanism for change, and what that means, and how do we do that, right? How do we do that? It's so important.
Like generally, I'm thinking that the art is the speaking or the language of the freedom in some way. And I'm just thinking how the government in these pandemic times, they sliced the culture and the arts. How it's like, how it's strange for me.
Art is liberation. Art is freedom. Art is non-binary. A song of Renee Taylor says that we banish the binary, right? So we say art is, there's no right or wrong. It's just art. Let's make some art. Let's make some music. Let's do some drama. Let's dance. Right? Let's do it. Yeah, I think that's the direction we're gonna. That's a direction it would be nice to head into. That's a direction that is pure, and very few things are pure in this world. So it's up to us to be the arbiters, to hold that with integrity for ourselves and for others.
Yeah. Oof, it shifted to some heavy themes and like a lot of things to think and talk.
And that's the beauty of it, I think. I think that, I keep saying I think, but I'm thinking a lot is what I'm saying, yeah? And as I'm thinking, I know this to be true, that we need to continue to have these conversations. You and I will have these conversations. We'll have these conversations with our peers and our other professionals in our respective spaces and places. And these conversations, these dialogues must continue. And then it's not just about having conversations, because I have a lot of conversations. It's about how am I being active? How am I taking action? What am I doing to make that change? You know what I mean? Like, what are the steps I'm doing? And then being in relationship with others, so this way they hold me accountable. Adam, that's great practice. Also, Adam, I need to call you in on that, because that may not be the best practice. So maybe we need to, or you, me, Adam, needs to think about how I'm approaching some of the work at times, right? It's important to be in that kind of communication openly. And that's not easy all the time, is it? Sometimes it's really hard.
Yeah.
Challenging. But at the end
You're
of the day,
pushing our limits.
Yeah, it's pushing. Yep. Beautifully put, Jakub.
I would like to lead it a little bit more to get a beautiful conversation, but maybe I think for me personally, now I have so many thoughts in my mind to think about that I have to leave it for a moment and watch this video also the later. And I would like to ask you about, we had a very important conversation, and I hope that so many people will hear that and see that. For even if they will just start to think, I think it will be important. I would like once again ask you about, in relationship, all this conversation about your chair in North American Dramatherapy Association, and maybe what is my question again? Another question is, what do you think that people like me, not you because you are already doing that, but people like me, maybe some, the students in Czech Republic, maybe other people, what do you think we can do with this team? How we can get action? As you said, talking is great, but we have to take action. So maybe what are your plans as a member, or maybe you will come with something new and we can do that for raise up this team.
Yeah. Oh, Jakub, so much. So the I'm identifying that in North America, we've had 41, 42, we're in our 42nd year, I believe, as an organization, right? Um, and I recognize that there's been a lot of rupture and there needs to be a lot of healing. How do we move towards a space of repair so that we can open up even more space to do this work that you and I are talking about, right? To be active around it. But it starts with identifying and acknowledging that there's been great harm to people. And then it's about, having conversations and showing up. It's about meeting and engaging in workshops that speak to this work of diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, right? Um, Going to those workshops and immersing ourselves in it. Knowing when to speak up and speak out and advocate, but also knowing when to shut up and listen, right? It's so important. And then not just going to these workshops and saying, great, I went to this great workshop, it was amazing, but going to the workshop and actually like putting it into practice. You know what I mean? Like, how do we decolonize and the white supremacy, the Western worldview of the work and make it more comprehensive, make it more complete of many more experiences, right? Many more experiences. How do we offer, and I always will say this, how do we offer visibility and representation in the work, So if we're using projective tools and we have puppets, make sure you have puppets of all shapes, sizes, and colors so that when you were working with our clients, the clients see themselves in one way or another. That like there is something that they can connect to within this work. You know what I mean? Because imagine, seeing a group of puppets and none of them seem to connect with who you are, but everyone else is connected to it. In our spaces, making sure that our spaces are containers, right? That hold an openness where it's like, okay, I get to enter in here. So we're seeing different representations of cultures.
As you said, the puppet. Sorry for disrupting. Like, as you said, the puppets, I'm just thinking like, I don't have any specific puppet. Like, if I have a puppet, there are the animals usually. But it came to my mind, it could be very, very interesting to do with Czech students to have the puppets like the different colors, like associated with like the, let's say, the Asian people, African or African American people, let's say there are white people, and also like the Native Americans. And which is another theme which I think, for me, very important. I remember visiting the Native Americans Museum in Manhattan, and white woman with a kid said, "Look at these beautiful people, the Indians. They were amazing people." And I noticed the Native Americans standing nearby, it was the guard, and like looked at the view like, we are still here. I still remember the feeling also. It was another very important moment for me. So it could be very, very interesting how could be the, let's say, we have only the white Czech students. But it's maybe more thinking about me, but I think, how the relationship to different, let's say, the color of the skin of the puppet can be, how do you feel with this puppet? Is in some way different from the, let's say, white puppet or yellow, whatever. I will still let you if you let me.
Oh, but we share, right? We share. I've done a lot of work with puppets. With what's going on in the United States right now with racial injustice, Black and brown bodies being targeted at a ridiculous rate being murdered because of the color of our skin.
Yeah.
Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders being targeted because they are Asian. And the amount of hate and anger. A lot of my clients are BIPOC folks. They're folks of color. I am a person of color, so it impacts me and it impacts them. So we work with it. We talk about it. We put it into play. And that can be traumatic and it can be hard and it can be challenging, just as you said, Jakub. But also we have the opportunity to embrace our joy, to embrace our excellence, the richness that is our culture. You know, we get to celebrate our ancestors and in doing so, celebrate ourselves. I think that's also important too in the work. To be able to celebrate, you know, where we are and where we've come from and where we would like to go.
I'm now thinking what Robert said in the interview was like at the end, that world needs more hope. That's what the world needs.
Yeah. I would say that Robert's right.
The celebration and the hope.
Celebration, hope, and I'm going to add love.
Yeah.
You know, we need lots and lots of love. Oh, there it is. Oh
Yeah.
We need love.
I will do that like a thumbnail. Because on the last thumbnail I took like the unicorn glasses.
Nice.
I personally think that we should end now because it's a lot of things to think. So thank you very much, Adam, for your interview and for your thoughts and your openness.
Yeah. Jakub, thank you. Thank you for the space. Thank you for our conversation.
It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you for this, what we have between us. Thank you.
Yes, it was a pleasure for me.
Indeed.